The SQL listening architecture we get with grid infrastructure, it's a two-tier listening structure. There's this thing known as the SCAN. The SCAN stands for Single Client Access Name. Single Client Access Name. It's one name resolving to 3 addresses. The idea of the Single Client Access Name is it's a single stable name that's used by all users. And in this particular case, the Single Client Access Name that I created, well, if I do NSLOOKUP of, and it was called gold cluster -scan dot goldcluster.example.com. That's the name that I created as my single client access name. It doesn't mean it's the name that all clients are meant to use, the single name to be used by all clients. It resolves to 3 addresses, DHCP assigned addresses, 3 addresses for fault tolerance. And these addresses will be brought up on one machine or another. And the grid infrastructure, of course, will decide. You can see right now my 3 scan VIPs, one of them is on gold 2, 2 of them are on gold 1. So they get distributed across the cluster. On each of those listening addresses, we start a scan listener, a database listener at that point. Then the purpose of the scan then is a stable name that all users use. So whenever a client issues a connect string, it will ask for the scan. The scan will resolve to one of those 3 highly available addresses that will fail over from one node to another. And then the scan listener performs redirection to a node listener. And the node listener is what will actually connect you to a database itself. So looking at my environment here, if I go to, say, where I had my database running. Now, this was the cluster where I assigned my server, my database, to a server pool. I crashed one machine and we saw the database fail over. So at this point, I really have absolutely no idea as an end user where that database actually is. But that doesn't matter. Because of the single client access name, the scan, I can issue my normal connect string, connectors system manager, the scan name at ironcluster-scan.ironcluster.example.com. I know it's on port 1521 because it's on default, and the database service is RDB. And I have no idea where that thing actually is. But it's worked. So what happened in that flow? Well, that connect string, that was resolved by the DNS into one of 3 addresses. Those addresses being DHCP assigned virtual addresses. But the DNS was updated by grid infrastructure, so that actually worked. Then, having contacted the scan listener on one of those 3 highly available addresses, grid infrastructure took it a step further and said, what do you actually want? You want something called RDB, and connected me to the appropriate instance wherever it happened to be. But I really didn't know. It was all completely automated. And that's the beauty of it. If we configure session that it is automated, if you configure the session failover, it can be transparent to the client. As I mentioned in response to that earlier question, with the current release, transactions cannot fail over. So they would have to be handled, they will be rolled back, and your application software would have to handle that. But the session itself will be failed over automatically. And that will work not just for RAC, it will work for single instance databases, as I demonstrated. It will work for failover from primary to standby in a DataGuard environment. So the listening architecture is an important part of this.